This week, we are reviewing Argylle. Nick, whether you like it or not, I brought my fucking cat, and he is on this episode. Let's go, brother! Ladies and gentlemen, it's another episode of Two Peas on a Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. Of course, we review the latest and sometimes greatest movies every week. Gerald here with you. And on the other side is the deepest, darkest, secret agent, undercover, so stealth, I can't even see him. Nick, are you there?
It's me. It's Henry Cavill. Or is it Glasses guy? You'll never know for sure.
It's fucking Glasses guy. What's up, man? How are
1,000 YouTube subs. Let me just pimp you out here. Just get the applause rolling in here. I don't have it on the soundboard, or I'd hit the button. But fine. Congrats, 1,000 on the Two Peas YouTube channel. Keep subbing, people. If you're watching the video version of this, hit that sub button. If you're listening to this, keep listening, but go over to YouTube and subscribe anyway.
Thanks so much, man. It means a lot. We had our celebratory live stream last night. Thanks for showing up for that. And it's been a labor of love. It's hard work, as you know. I mean, the YouTube game is weird, man. But it was a milestone that I'm proud of, and I'll keep putting out content. We'll keep putting out content. We'll keep doing the podcast, and thanks for that shout out, man. I appreciate it. This week we are reviewing the new Matthew Vaughn spy thriller comedy thing called Argylle, which the trailer has been playing before every movie that's ever come out in the last 6 months, so everybody knows.
I feel like I saw the trailer. If you accumulated the runtime of this trailer, the accumulated times I've seen this trailer was longer than the movie itself.
Yeah, it's been a lot of times I've seen it. I took my son to see it, Logan, 11-year-old, and we saw it together today, and we will talk about our experience and our review of the film. But before we get there, Nick, before we talk about Argylle, we start out every episode with what we call one big question.
You've got to ask yourself a question.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
I was like dancing around in front of the camera with my finger, and then I was like, oh God, I got to hit a button.
My cat was here, by the way. He left already. He's already tired of this episode, so he's gone. But he's
not surprising.
Not surprising. Or something. He'll be back. What question? I'm going to let you pick it, man. What do you got over there from the fans?
Well, I'm reaching into the grab bag here because I liked a couple. A couple here, and I love it. So we might get more than one big question and one big question today, but we're going to go back to the champion of last week. It was basically the Brett episode last week. We're going back to Brett again today, Gerald, because I really loved his question over in the Discord. Do you think if Matthew Vaughn stuck around to direct the rest of the X-Men movies, they would have turned out better, the exception being Days of Future Past? I guess he's specifically referring to X-Men Apocalypse or X-Men Dark Phoenix. Kind of the two...
yeah,
the kind of dismal, bleak endings to the Fox X-Men franchise that we had after Days of Future Past.
I liked what he did with First Class. You know, I thought that was one of the better entries. I enjoyed that film. I think that sticking to the spotlight being on the characters and their development as opposed to making it about the action set pieces or whatever, but it was a really strong character-driven piece, I thought. So I did like his take on that. So I don't know. I feel like we would have gotten probably very different films. For sure. But I also don't want to kind of spoil where my head's at with Argylle and some of the other stuff that Matthew Vaughn has done. I mean, as a filmmaker in general, I think I like him for the most part. I mean, I loved Kick-Ass with Nick Cage and Chloe Grace Moretz, and obviously the Kingsman franchise. I'm sure will come up tonight as we get through our discussion of Argylle. So I think it would probably have heightened those projects a little bit. I don't know that they would have been any more passable, but I think they would have been a little bit better. What do you think?
Emphatically no, because Matthew Vaughn also directed Kingsman: The Golden Circle, which my favorite running gag that only I cared about from Epic Film Guys when I went to see that movie is that it is a movie. It's so long, I'm still watching it. That's how unbearably long it felt to sit in the theater and watch Kingsman: The Golden Circle. No, I do not have the reverence for Vaughn as a filmmaker that you do. Yeah. I liked Kick-Ass. I liked First Class. I liked the first Kingsman movie. I hated Golden Circle, so I never even saw, what was it, The Kingsman or whatever. I never even went
Secret
back
Service or whatever. Yeah.
and saw that one. I just didn't. I checked out on Vaughn as a director. Did Argylle bring me back in? I guess is the real question. So
I guess we'll see. There's a little hidden gem in his filmography too called Layer Cake. Did you ever see that with Daniel
Nope, never
Craig?
saw that one. Yep.
That's actually probably, I'm not even kidding. Well, I think Kick-Ass is probably my favorite, but Layer Cake is a close runner-up for me in terms of Vaughn's filmography.
Yeah,
but it's a hidden gem. Not a lot of people know about it. What other question? Did you have another one in the grab bag there you wanted to mention?
So this one's a bit of a jokey question, and I wanted to pick this question specifically, Gerald, because we're two middle-aged white dudes hosting a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Amanda over on the Facebook fan page asks, "Who is hotter, Sam Rockwell or Henry Cavill?"
Ooh, actually, I'm going to let you go first because I think your answer is
Cavill all day, baby. Cavill all day.
You know what?
Big beef.
You know what? No, you know what? It's Sam Rockwell.
No.
Dude, the charm, the charisma. That guy is so funny. Like, I mean, my boxers would drop, brother. Sam Rockwell walked in and started giving me the turning on the charm. That's a good question, though. I mean, they're both great. And in this movie, Henry Cavill was a bit of a joke, though. I don't know. He's kind of played like that over the top, kind of like outlandish kind of joke character. I don't know.
We'll get into it. We got a lot to discuss when we break down this film. We're also going to bring up, you're going to get a threefer today, ladies and gentlemen, a threefer for questions from the audience today. But we can't really talk about one of them until we actually are talking about the film itself. And I'm going to say even into spoilers. So we got to wait until we get a little bit deeper before we can bring up the last one. But I did like it as a question.
Well, don't forget that then, because I need you to write that down. Remember that. All right.
Wow.
All right. Jeez. I need you to remember that. I'm not going to remember. So.
Wow.
All right. Argylle. Thank you for the questions, guys. We appreciate the feedback every week. Thank you so much for your entries. And one big question, if you want to get involved, join up to the Facebook fan page. There's a link to the Discord. Get in there, ask your questions, and we will shout them out every week.
Do it.
Argylle, directed by Matthew Vaughn, starring Bryce Dallas Howard, Henry Cavill, Dua Lipa, John Cena, Sam Rockwell, a CGI cat, and a host of others. But before we talk about the movie, Nick, we always give our score out of 10 up top. We have not discussed this with each other. I just saw this movie today. I think you did as well.
Same, yep.
So I have not shared any of my thoughts on the film on social media or anything like that. So we're going to find out in real time. But we give our scores out of 10 up front to each other in what we call the early score reveal.
Damn it, this always happens. I think I'm going to score and then I never score. It's not fair.
Ooh. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what Gerald thought of this, baby. You ready?
It is not fair, buddy.
Count us in here. Bring it in.
Count us in.
3, 2, 1. We could have just stayed at the 3.
Oh my God.
My God. I was really hoping you were going to love this and I could yell at you for how long you were.
Well, let's tell the audio audience. So a 4 for me, a 4 out of 10, and Nick is giving it a 3.
And a 3, it is lucky to get. Lucky to get.
The 4 for me, I feel the same way. That's a 3.5, right? Wow, that's a
3.5.
Is that the worst movie that we've ever reviewed?
I think so, because I think, our average, I think, on Five Nights at Freddy's ended up at 3.5 as well. Yeah. Because it was 2 and 5. So I think it worked out to be the same. So it's tied right now with Five Nights at Freddy's.
Man.
I went so far, Gerald, as to make a visual gag just for the YouTube audience who's watching the film here. I designed a new poster. I designed new artwork for this film. Would you like to see it?
Yeah, I would actually. Yeah.
Now, here we go. I'm gonna pop it up here in the background.
Hit me with it.
It's. I gotta wait for StreamYard, but the suspense must be killing you though.
It really is.
And I will describe this for the audio audience. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Here it is. This is a baby in a high chair.
Yeah, being fed.
And it's a baby being spoon-fed in a high chair because that's what Matthew Vaughn and whoever the writer of this disaster was, Jason Fuchs, I believe is the writer's name. This is what they think you as an audience member are, a baby who needs to be spoon-fed absolutely everything. This movie is terrible.
Yeah, it's not good.
Hated this so much.
Why is this so long? Also, I mean, can we say? I know you're fired up. I can see your face is getting red.
I
If
hated
we,
this so much.
but can we agree? Had this movie been under 2 hours, at least it would have been a little more digestible. I feel
No,
like I feel like
absolutely
it
not.
went on forever, and they relish in so many different plot twists, which we'll get into our spoiler discussion. By the way, for a few minutes here, guys, we will be spoiler free. We won't spoil Argylle for you. We won't tell you who the real Agent Argylle is. We won't talk about any of that stuff quite yet.
This child, this little baby right here, is the real
That's the
Agent
Agent
Argylle.
Argylle.
That's the real
That
Agent
is.
Argylle right there.
That's him, yeah, or her, yeah. But we won't. We'll let you know when we get into spoilers. But generally speaking, Nick, up top, okay. Let me just tell you in a quick wrap up without spoiling anything, and then we'll get into obviously the deep discussion here in a few minutes. For me, it started out okay. I was kind of like, all right. And we were joking about the trailer earlier, and that opening scene with Dua Lipa, who I am freaking in love with. We were joking about pre-recording, but I love her. Was in that basically the heart of the opening of the movie. And we saw a lot of that in the trailer, which also kind of let me down a little bit because it was okay, but it was like we'd already kind of seen it all in the trailer 100 times and before every movie. So it started out okay, but then it got to where it was really, like you said, just exposition, spoon feeding, horrible CGI in this movie. I think I read today, actually, after seeing it, that it was $200 million budget. And you and I did Godzilla -1 a few months ago, and I'm going, what are these people spending? And I'm not a visual FX artist, so I'm not trying to talk down to those people, but I just don't get where it went because it was not good in terms of the effects in this movie, which kind of took me out of it at different points throughout the film. There's some things I really, really did like about this movie, namely Sam Rockwell. I fucking loved him in this film. I mean, I love him in everything, and he played kind of a typecast character that he plays a lot of times, and just very charming, very charismatic. Really kept me invested in the story because he was kind of always in the story. If his character had died or had not been in there, I would not have cared as much. But I was really connected to him and his kind of comedic wit and the dad jokes he was kind of throwing in, and I don't know. I really liked him in this movie. And then there was a couple scenes when we get into spoilers that I really enjoyed as sequences in the film that I thought were pretty mesmerizing and cool to look at, and I had a blast with. But those few things in the plus column, it's just so many things in the negative column. I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of them, but it was just way too long. It was way too convoluted and paint by numbers and cliff notes for the viewer, and the plot twists were ridiculous, man. It was just one after the other after the other after the other, and it's just you don't need all that shit to entertain an audience, and it honestly gets quite confusing after a while because you're like, well, wait a minute, who's double crossing who and who's with who, and you just kind of get lost a little bit. And I think that's kind of the best way to put this, is that the screenplay or the story here was like a map that didn't point you to the right place. You got lost along the way. And it just didn't do a good job of keeping me on the path. So go ahead with general thoughts before we get into spoilers.
So I mentioned this when we reviewed Thanksgiving. I mentioned this when we reviewed Totally Killer as well. But it is not good writing when you have to stop the narrative of the movie wholesale to explain a twist to the audience, to explain a plot revelation to the audience. The problem with this script is that's all it is, over and over and over and over again. It's this continual bombardment of plot twist after plot twist after plot twist after this is a double cross of this and this is a double cross of this. It's so much of that back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. It really, honest to God, it gets kind of confusing at some point. And at some point sitting in the theater for this, I just stopped caring. I legitimately just stopped caring about all the twists, about all the
Same
absolute
here.
Ridiculous nonsense. I was like, you could have space aliens come down. There's no aliens in this, spoiler alert. We didn't get there yet, but you could have space aliens come down and start shooting laser guns at John Cena or something. And it would have made as much sense as all of the convoluted nonsense in this film did. This film is, I think the phrase I'm searching for here, this film was overwritten. I feel like it was so overwritten, and they think that it was like super super clever, like all these different things, and they just way overcomplicated the premise of this film. I think that there's a great film in here. I don't think any of the performances are particularly bad. I really like Bryce Dallas Howard in this movie.
Me
I
too.
think she's absolutely phenomenal. But I just think that like it's shifting so much narratively all the time, and then you have to wholesale stop and be like, okay, wait, now here, audience, here's the spoon-fed baby right here behind me. Let's give you all the information on this is where we are up to date. It's terrible.
Right.
It's one of the worst written things I've seen on the screen in a long time. I hated this movie.
I'm with you. I think, I mean, obviously you gave it a 3, I gave it a 4, so I think it's fair to say you maybe hated it a little more than I did. But I got to be honest with you, I'm not even kidding you. That Sam Rockwell, Bryce Dallas Howard, Dua Lipa, even though she had a small part, characters like that kept me at a 4. I mean, they kind of knew the assignment and they did what they could with the material they had, which I think is what you and I both are saying is the foundational issue here, is that it was like it was written by that baby that's behind you. So
Literally.
let's get into spoilers. So going forward, guys, anything that we discuss about Argylle, including who is the real Agent Argylle, which has been a big thing on social media, we will talk about it. We'll be spoiled in the next 20 minutes or so as we go through our breakdown of Argylle. So if you have not seen this movie and you don't want to be spoiled, come back after you've seen the movie to finish the episode.
And
So
let me
Nick-
emphasize to you, please let this movie be spoiled for you. Don't waste your money. Do not waste the 2.5 hours you have to sit through this ridiculously convoluted nonsense. I promise you, your time is better spent doing legitimately anything else. Absolutely anything else.
Yeah, what I was going to tell you, what I want to
Gerald
ask you
is the real Agent Argylle. Like, I mean,
That's-
that would have made as good of a movie if just Gerald like randomly walked onto the screen and was like, "It's me."
How great would that have been? 5 stars. What I wanted to ask you as we lead into our spoiler discussion here, we'll get into different, plot beats or whatever, but Heart of Stone, The Gray Man, Red Notice, Ghosted, which came out on Apple last year. These like kind of tepid, shallow thriller comedies that have this romance built into them are like a subgenre now, and I got to be honest with you, I hate all of them. Like, I don't think any of them are any good, and I think this is another one to add to that list. And that also makes it unoriginal, which I feel like is something Argylle suffered from too. Like, it just wasn't original. Like, it was somewhat predictable. Like, we're joking about the real Agent Argylle, but there is by the way, we're in spoilers, don't forget. So we're gonna say whatever you want to say, Nick. But there's a scene in the first act of the movie where Ellie, is her name Ellie, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Ellie is, Bryce Dallas Howard is at a book signing or whatever, and she's talking about her book, and she mentions an accident that she had, ice skating. And I was kind of like, what the fuck what was she talking about? So I kind of started thinking about it as the movie went on. There was a couple other remarks made. But anyway, to make a long story short, I kind of figured out what was going to happen and what ended up happening and who ended up being the real Agent Argylle. Was that predictable to you as well? Or I'll ask you that first. That's the first question. And the second question is, when you found out, was it any kind of like revelatory, like, oh, wow.
No, I didn't clock it ahead of time, but by the time the movie got to the point where it revealed it, I didn't care. I legitimately didn't care about it anymore because it was so much of this like back and forth. Like I said, it literally it stops the movie so many times to spoon feed these different twists and turns and like, oh, this person's working for this person and they're working for this organization and blah. Like it is like even by that point the movie had pretty much already lost me. And like we got to see Bryce Dallas Howard do some like badass action hero shit, which was really, really cool. But other than that, like aspect of it, like like, why wasn't that just this movie from the get-go? Why
Mhm.
did it have to be wrapped in this convoluted nonsense of her also being a writer who was also writing the spy books? Why was there this god-awful train sequence, this fight sequence on this train that lasted forever, where it was constantly cutting between Henry Cavill and Sam Rockwell? Like, Henry
Yeah, I
Cavill
hated that.
as the fictional, and like, I understand, like, if you want to do that effect, like, periodically, but then, like, it does it so frequently it's ridiculous in that fight sequence. But then when you get the revelation later that she's the real Agent Argylle, it doesn't even logically make sense that she's putting Argylle in Sam Rockwell's character's place. It
Exactly.
doesn't even make sense in like a logical sense. Like,
I
Argyle's
think that
meant
was
to
to
be
throw
her
us off.
stand-in. It's meant to be her stand-in, not him. Like, I'm just that baffled me even more. I was like, wait,
When
why did we have to watch the 1,001 cuts between the two? And I'm
I know, I
not kidding,
hated that.
guys. It's like every half second. It
I
happens
hated that.
so much. It's
I
ridiculous.
hated it. I hated it. I think that was to throw us, the audience, off. Like, oh, okay, well, Sam Rockwell must be the real
Well, good.
Agent
It was
Argylle or
more of
whatever.
this. It was more of the spoon feeding baby
Right.
stuff.
Now, what I want to say, and I think based on what you're saying, I think you're probably going to agree with me, but this movie succeeded. Like, had me like, oh, okay, I like this, when it was like over the top, campy, silly, crazy. Like, I'm thinking of, I'll go ahead and talk about it now because it's towards the end of the movie, but I love the like smoke bomb dancing scene with her and Rockwell when they're doing the choreographed dance while they're killing all the fucking
Yeah,
security
it's a lot of
people.
Vaughn. It's Vaughn leaning into his
I
Vaughn thing.
loved that scene. But that kind of like campy shit because she lifts him up in the fucking thing with this crotch in her face and she's spinning him around and they do the dirty dancing lift and like it's just a whole choreographed like musical dance number while they're murdering people.
Yeah.
But the problem is the movie disconnects from that like tone 80% of the rest of the film. Like it's not
Like
that
the
type of
whole
movie.
rest of the runtime of the film leading up to it, like, you don't lean into like the Vaughn stuff. Like, you think about like the apartment scene in Kick Ass when
Right.
Hit Girl goes to kill everybody at the apartment complex, or any of those kind of like Kingsman, like the scene at the end of Kingsman where all the heads explode in confetti and stuff like that. Like the really Vaughn type stuff, like the things that you
Mhm.
expect when you go to a Vaughn movie. I mean,
Sure.
I think I didn't like that scene as much as I liked just the choreography and like the visual of the ice skating around in the oil thing, even
That
though
was
that made
cool. That
no
was
sense
another one.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
How you were skating in oil, because it doesn't work like that. But that's beside neither here nor there. It still looked cool, which was the whole point of it. It was just meant
That was
to
another one.
look really
Yep.
really cool. But I think that by the time the movie got to that point, I was so over everything that had anything to do with this movie that I didn't care anymore. I legitimately didn't care anymore. I was just waiting for them to shovel in another plot twist, which they kept going. Even after those scenes, they kept going
Oh
with a
my
couple
God.
more.
It was
And
like
it never stopped and just let the audience just enjoy the story unfolding on the screen. Give me one of two things, G, and this is where I wanted to lean back into it. Jason Nerdriver asked this question.
okay.
Jason asked, what's the one thing you'd change about the movie that would instantly increase your score?
Mm.
The answer to that question for me is pick a lane. Give us entirely, with a small portion of the plot being the Ellie Conway stuff, not the whole she was also a secret spy nonsense who was amnesia, then brainwashed, and like all this other stuff. Like, pick a lane, give us like the Ellie Conway stuff, and she's just a writer, and it's the whole movie is just like the John Cena, Henry Cavill, Dua Lipa, like crazy over the top action spy thriller. Because that opening sequence, I loved that whole opening. I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
great. I really, really loved that. Or don't give us that at all. Literally, don't give us that at all, and just give us this Ellie Conway is just a writer, and like, even if you're going to do the fictional aspect of it where you're like imagining her writing it and you're seeing like the things that she's writing, that's great, but don't include all the intercutting nonsense of like
Yeah.
throwing Argyle in there in real life. Like, he's like a manifestation of like her fear and anxiety, or like whatever he's meant to be. He's meant to be 50 different things throughout the different runtime of the film, whatever the plot needs him to be in that moment. It just like pick a lane. That's my answer to Jason's question. Pick a lane.
I mean, for me, it's pretty similar answer, but I would like this movie to have leaned more into the campiness, and I kind of already mentioned that. Like, stop taking yourself so seriously. Like, this is an absurd, like, kind of annoying plot to follow, so don't make it harder for the audience. Like, let's just be stupid. Like, let's just have a good time. Like, you mentioned the oil skating scene. I mentioned the smoke bomb scene. If you have that train sequence towards the beginning with Sam Rockwell when he finds her initially, and you take out that intercutting weird editing shit, like, that's a fun scene. Like, you don't need the Henry Cavill cut in, like, weird fucking flashes or whatever. And that was when we were introduced to his character, and he was my favorite character in the film. Like, I just loved him in this movie. So I think if we had stuck to those kind of over-the-top, campy, silly, we know who we are kind of scenes throughout the whole movie, then this would have been, and it would have been an hour and 45 minutes. This would have been a good movie. This would have been a movie I would have rewatched on streaming and like probably enjoyed it, but it was too long, and it broke away from that campiness factor way too often. Like, it was probably 70% serious tone, 30% camping. It should have been probably the other way around, in my opinion. But
that split wasn't evenly distributed throughout the film either.
Right.
So when it decided to go campy, it was like full throttle campy, but it was too little too late, in my opinion, at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. So the plot twist too, it's like, I'm going to ask you, because for me, at one point it's like, okay, I'm done. Like, I don't need any more plot twists, but we get I think the first like major plot twist we get is the parents, right? Is that right? Or is there one before that?
I think, no, well, no, because I mean, she runs from, she gets saved, rescued by Sam Rockwell's character, and then they go to like this little dingy motel or whatever, and then she overhears him saying, "I'm going to murder you." So she runs for it. I guess that's sort of a twist or whatever. But then she has to go to her parents. I would say that the parents would be the first the first
huge
twist. Like, oh wow, like this isn't what I expected at all. I wasn't not on board with the film at that point. It was hovering between pass fail for me at that point, like, because of that train sequence being as bad as it was. But I was like, okay, let me see how they save this. Let me see how they take this over the finish line, like the rest of the way. Like, I like the stuff in the hallway up to that point when he's trying to teach her how to like crush a guy's skull.
That was
and that
hilarious,
kind of stuff.
dude. I loved it.
Like, I liked all that stuff, and it was like, okay, like after the train sequence, it was kind of winning its goodwill back a little bit with me and stuff. Right. But then, from the parents onward, it was just an absolute avalanche of exhausting plot twist after plot twist. Yeah, and then not just the twists, but like I said, the worst part about a twist. I was talking to Rebecca about this earlier, and I was thinking about great films with a big twist in them, and I thought of like Usual Suspects or whatever. When you get to that plot twist at the end of The Usual Suspects, it immediately, in your brain as an audience member, it goes snap. It snaps all the things into place that you saw throughout the film that was like, okay, it completely automatically makes sense to you because those little seeds have been planted the whole way, and they've been nurtured, they've been watered. I mean, Christopher McQuarrie is a great writer. That's why. This was not written with the craftsmanship that a script like The Usual Suspects script was written for. It was just like, let's see how many more of these we can throw at the audience. But then you have to, I hate to keep harping on this, but it's true. You cannot stop the narrative of the movie wholesale and be like, now wait, now we know everybody in the audience is going to be confused, so let's explain this whole thing to you before we move on. That happens so many times in this movie. So many times.
I agree. The movie also took on the facade of like a soap opera after a while because... You know how you would see
he's secretly my twin brother.
Exactly. Yeah, that kind of shit. Like, it was just too, but it didn't play those moments with the same levity as some of the other sequences that we talked about. Like, when we find out Bryan Cranston's character, I thought he was a good villain in this movie, and he understood the assignment, but we find out that he's been portraying her dad or whatever. It just had that kind of like cheesiness factor to it, to the reveal. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like oh my God, I can't believe that. It was more like, really, dude? Like, what the fuck? Like, kind of like, it was surprising. Like, I didn't see it coming, but I did think it was weird they were kind of hiding the dad. He was never on camera. It was always
Yeah.
Catherine O'Hara.
I was waiting. I was just waiting for them to reveal.
Yeah,
who
yeah,
the
yeah. I
dad-
didn't know who
I was
the
like, the dad's
dad.
important to this somehow.
Yeah, I didn't know who the dad was, but I
Yeah.
knew it was going to be somebody that we had seen in some other, facet or
Yeah.
whatever. But
Yeah. But
I
this
mean, at the
isn't like a Spider-Man Homecoming thing when all of a sudden you realize that MJ's dad is Michael Keaton. Like, this isn't like that level of plot twist where you're just like, oh snap, or you're like, whatever. It's just like, okay, but that doesn't make sense. Like, what? Like, why? Huh? What?
Yeah,
Like,
dial it.
then it has to wait. Like, it has to continue trying to explain this to the audience. It's terrible.
You have the parent reveal. Then you have the reveal that, Ellie is actually bad in a sense, and she was, part of the problem initially. And then you have the reveal at the very end of the film where Henry Cavill's character, Argylle, is not somebody she made up, but he's a real dude. And for some reason, he has a southern accent and a mullet. I don't fucking know what that was either. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
And
it's weird.
it's just like plot twist after plot twist after plot twist. And again, if you take 30 to 40 minutes off of this movie, then maybe all that shit wouldn't be as unbearable, but it was just way too fucking long, dude. Like,
Well, I think
for
honestly, I think to even go back to Jason's question, what's another thing that would have made this movie a better movie? Just stick to one. Stick to one of those twists. Like, when you find out that she was secretly a secret agent, okay? But then you find out that she was not a good guy. Imagine, like, this might, maybe it wouldn't have gotten a pass, but it would have gotten a higher score for me if they would have just stuck with that. That she wasn't like a brainwashed spy, that like once she regained her memory, she realized she was really a bad guy. And
Yeah.
like, they just made her a bad guy. Like, she was another
was
villain
it.
for the rest
because
of the film.
because they kind of did that for a while, and
They did that
then
for a little while, but they didn't
Right.
have the guts to see it through.
They didn't stick
took
to it.
back.
They didn't stick to it
Yeah.
because I thought, oh, okay, well, we're gonna hate her now. She's gonna be a villain, and we're gonna be pulling for Sam Rockwell, who I kind of already was anyway. So I was like, okay, like whatever. I also knew the friend was gonna come back. What's her name?
Yeah, the friend from like the very beginning or whatever.
Yeah, the one that died in the beginning. They kept
Yep.
kind of like laying little Easter eggs about
Yep.
that, and I was like, okay, well, she's gonna come back, and then she did. So I
Yeah,
wasn't
they made
super
that
surprised by
really
that.
obvious once they explained the whole like, oh, I got a letter from a fan thing about whatever.
Right.
And she's
And
like, oh, that's how I was gonna bring this character back. And I was like, yeah, okay, just you wait. The fan was really her, and she's really alive. Just
Mhm.
wait.
Yeah,
And yeah, of
Kira.
course.
Kira
Yeah.
is her name, by the way.
Yeah, of course, that's what happened. But by that point, the movie I had lost me so badly. Like, I was so completely over
It's
literally
also-
everything about it.
It's also baffling that you have actors like Richard E. Grant and Samuel L. Jackson in the movie, and they're like in it for like not even 5 minutes, and just like have very, very small kind of inopportune roles in the film, which was kind of weird too. I don't know if that was part of the editing or if they just, some of their stuff got left out, but I thought that was weird. Like, Richard E. Grant is an icon. He's like in one scene. Like,
Yep.
just like early on in the film, Samuel Jackson shows up a couple times. But
I mean, the Richard E. Grant one I don't mind as much because it lends a little something to Cranston's. Cranston as the head baddie. Like, it lends a little something to him
Sure.
when he just kind of so casually blows him away.
Sure.
Like, it lends a little something to that. Samuel L. Jackson's biggest contribution to this movie is sitting and watching a Lakers game, because that's most
Nailed
of what
it.
his screen time is spent doing. And then they start sending him a file, and then he starts sitting there slapping the desk and applauding like this child. If you gave this child like some chocolate or something, and they were like slapping the high chair, and like that's what he's doing most of the time in this movie.
Well, he does have that whole diatribe about the Pinot Noir grape, which I thought was interesting. I don't know, man. I mean, let's talk about before we do our wrap up and we give our final thoughts. Let's talk about the mid credit scene. There's a scene, and I don't know a lot about this, Nick. I might need your help here, but I guess there's a scene that ties into the Kingsman films, and that this might be part of that universe, right? Or
I never saw The King's Man, which was what the prequel one or whatever, which I would guess would be the one that tied into this. So I don't know.
okay,
I just saw
but
The King's Man, and I was like, okay.
so
I
there,
didn't
so
care. I legitimately didn't care at that
no,
point.
I didn't either. I haven't seen those movies in so long that I was like, what? But like, what a WTF thing to throw in. I mean, because we're sitting here talking about throughout this review that there's way too many fucking plot twists. So now the movie's over, and you're like, all right. And now there's
Let me just
another
throw one
plot
more
twist.
at you. Here you go.
Yeah, right. During the credits, like what?
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess this young kid, 20 years prior to this film, goes into a pub, and the name of the pub is the King's Man.
Mhm.
He goes in there, and his name, he's having a kind of coded conversation with the bartender,
Mhm.
a spy conversation of some type.
Yep.
And we come to find out his name is Aubrey Argylle.
Mhm.
All right. So now we're supposed to go. And this is after we saw Henry Cavill's character at the book signing at the end of the movie, which was like a major kind of like, holy shit, Argyle's real, a real person.
Yeah.
So I think at a minimum, what you can say is they have planted plenty of seeds if they're going to have any kind of spin-offs or sequels or anything like that. I don't think it will, because critically, I don't think it's doing very well, and I don't think it's doing very well box office wise either. It made like
No.
16 million this weekend on a 200 million budget. So
Yeah, no, it definitely won't have any legs, because it's not going to have any goodwill with the audience either, because they're going to be just exhausted by this absolute barrage of nonsensical plot twists and everything like that. Like I said, pick a lane. To go back to Jason's question, pick a lane. If you want us to have the Ellie Conway was secretly like a secret agent the whole time plot, then sprinkle those seeds in earlier. Just a couple little seeds, not just an offhanded remark about an ice skating accident, but I mean really, like, have her they have the scene at the vineyard where like he swings at her, and like she remembers her training when he swings at her and like beats him up or whatever.
mhm.
Like, why don't we have that earlier in the movie? Why don't we have, like, if you're gonna make it about, like, that plot twist should have come way earlier in the movie.
Right.
And then it should have just been like a straightforward spy thriller after that, without all the stupid plot twists and turns. Like, it doesn't need it, and it's like a crutch trying to prop up these pointless, like, go nothing characters. Of course, they also had a romance, which like also was just like, of course they did. Like, why wouldn't they have, like, let's just throw one more thing on top of all this to go with
Sure.
it.
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, we'll wrap up here with our final thoughts. I think there was some fun to be had here. I mean, particularly with a couple of action sequences. The dance choreography, comedic timing in the smoke bomb sequence towards the end of the film was like, I was just ear to ear during that scene. I love the oil ice skating that you mentioned already. The train sequence I love for Sam Rockwell's kind of commentary throughout that sequence, and that we kind of met him during that moment. I mean, the performances here I thought were good. I mean, I thought Bryce Dallas Howard was awesome. I thought she really carried the material, and she kind
She's
of
the
plays,
best thing about this movie, frankly.
she kind of plays two different characters, really. I mean, Ellie and Rachel,
And really well too, I will
yeah,
say.
yeah, and she shifts it, on a dime, and she does a good job doing that. Sam Rockwell was the standout for me personally. I just thought he was so charismatic, so charming, so funny, so relatable, kept me kind of invested in the proceedings and what was going on, because I was kind of wondering where he was going to show back up. But you have names like the two of them, right? But you also have Bryan Cranston, Catherine O'Hara, Henry Cavill, Dua Lipa, who I have a crush on, Ariana DeBose, Samuel L. Jackson, John Cena. I mean, this is a marquee cast. This is a marquee lineup. It's directed by a pretty well-renowned action director in Matthew Vaughn. Like, this should have been better, and that's why it's just, with everybody involved, it's just such a disappointment for me that it's like essentially a Univision soap opera with a bunch of action sequences in it. Like, I just can't get past that it was kind of childish in that way. And I just wish it had, like you said, picked a lane where it was going to be this campy, crazy, over-the-top, zany spy comedy, kind of like a This Means War kind of thing with Reese Witherspoon, if you ever saw that, like that kind of deal. But instead, it kind of goes up and down where it's like that, but then tonally it'll be like, oh, we're going to be serious and we're going to, you know. I just couldn't figure out where I was supposed to be emotionally with this film. And aside from a few scenes here and there, and obviously the performances, I just didn't really enjoy very much. So I don't think it's one I'll be rushing to rewatch. What final thoughts do you have over there, buddy, on
Do not go see this
Argylle?
movie. The end. Do not see this movie. Just full stop.
Dude, your recaps are always so much more curt than mine, but I appreciate
This movie wasted enough of my time. I'm not going to waste any more of the audience's time talking about the dreadful, absolutely dreadful. One of the worst things I've written. One of the worst written things I've seen on the screen in a substantial amount of time.
That is fair. Hey, are we lining up here? The two Ps? We're kind of in sync. I mean, 4, 3, that's pretty good. I was afraid because I know you're a Henry Cavill fanboy and John Cena. And I'm like, Nick's going to come in here with like a 7 or something. And I'm going to have to tell him he's a fucking idiot. So you may be proud. I'm happy. I'm happy. Will you marry me? That's what I'm kind of
I really wish. Who did they cast to play Henry Cavill's sidekick?
What did you think of the cat, by the way? We didn't talk about the cat.
I hated the cat. I didn't care.
Why was the CGI? They couldn't get a fucking cat?
Literally didn't care at all.
There's like 1 billion cats in the world. They couldn't get a cat. I mean, this is crazy.
You just totally let that John Cena joke just fly right past you, didn't you? Didn't even.
Oh yeah, I get it now. But I mean, Taylor Swift dressed as a cat, and the cats. They could have used her. You know what I mean? Put another name on the marquee, brother.
Now all that subscriber totals just dropped below 1,000. It's down at like 700.
No, the Swifties are coming. The Swifties are coming with me. Get Dua Lipa and Swiftie in there. Come on, have her be the cat, man. Imagine how much better this movie would have been if Taylor Swift was the one in the cat role. It would be great. Have her in the backpack, the whole thing. All right, Nick, what are we doing next week, man? What are we talking about? What are we doing next week? Lisa
Frankenstein. Yeah. Frankenstein.
Lisa Frankenstein, directed by Zelda Williams, which is Robin Williams' daughter, in her directorial debut.
Diablo Cody script.
Written by Diablo Cody, starring Catherine Newton.
Should be better written than this.
Yeah. Wow. Not a lot to go on there, but I agree with you. It should be much better. So we'll do Lisa Frankenstein next week. Now, wrapping up on Argylle, it was a 3 from Nick. It was a 4 for me, which puts us at a 3.5 from the P's on Argylle. And we will get together next week, Nick, and we will talk about Lisa Frankenstein. And then after that, I think it's the Golden Peas, which is like a movie award show that, I don't know, I do and try to give out awards. So
Lois Sauce is going to be here.
He is. Yeah. He's gonna
Y'all
be
get to hear the
me.
god of podcasting on the microphone again, which is always a blessing and a treat.
Absolutely. Nick, I love you, brother. I'm sorry about Argylle. It was not good, but
well, see, here's the thing: 2024, not out the gate strong here. Not out the gate super strong. Like everything else that I've seen so far this year has been kind of catching up for award season. And like we had the roulette review last week, which I really, really enjoyed. And then this, I was good. Really excited to get back to the movies to see something new. I mean, Mean Girls was fine, but I think Mean Girls was fine because it was Mean Girls. Like it was, right. Like they would have had to try really hard to make a bad version of that movie. Yeah. So yeah, 2024 needs to pick it up in a hurry. So
yeah,
no pressure, Lisa Frankenstein.
We'll see what Lisa Frankenstein does for us, and then of course Dune Part 2 is on the horizon. I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, but we got what else? I got
Dune Part 1 next week too because they're reissuing it in theaters, so I get to see Dune Part 1. I have not seen it yet, so I'm super excited for that Patreon review. We'll be doing a Patreon review for Dune Part 1
Yeah, we'll do
sometime
that.
before Part 2 comes out. So make sure if you're not a patron, get involved over there, get signed up, because I want to get more content going to the patrons, whether it's
Hell
movie
yeah, dude.
reviews, whether it's countdowns, whether it's just me berating Gerald for an hour. We'll just get Dan on the microphone and it'll be just a Gerald browbeating for an hour.
So after Lisa Frankenstein and our Golden Peas episode, we have Dune Part 2,
Yep.
Spaceman, which is going to be coming to Netflix starring Adam Sandler, Roadhouse. I'm going to make Nick watch the Roadhouse remake with Jake Gyllenhaal, which he infamously loves the first one. So that I'm interested to see actually what you think of a modern day spin on a movie that you hate. I'm actually looking forward to that.
It doesn't have Patrick Swayze in it. It won't be worse. Like you guaranteed it won't be worse. It might be as bad, but I mean Patrick Swayze was one of the worst actors.
Come on.
Get out of here.
Come on. There was a Dirty
Horrible.
Dancing lift in Argylle. What do you his touch can be felt everywhere, brother. Even in current cinema. All right, nobody puts Nick in the corner. All right.